first dime he earned, okay? My dad was it was hard for him to earn money, right? The harder it is for you to earn money, the more you hold on to it, typically speaking. But he did talk to me, and he was really after me, and I remember one day just saying to my dad, would you leave me alone? I'll start my pension, okay? Because every time after I got my first job, my real job, my adulting job, he was on me, he was on me, he was on me. And it's hard, isn't it? You've been, going to school is self-imposed poverty. Because any time that you are working, you really should be studying. Because that is going to be the impetus for everything else. And so you have to kind of get that mindset. And I used to say, chewing gum for me when I was in school was a luxury. And it was. Money flows right now like you guys can't believe. I remember, you get free books, you get free this, you get help on this, you get help on that. I'm happy for you, and I mean that very sincerely. But it hasn't always been that way, and I don't see how it can continue that way. I really don't. And what they're banking on is that you guys are going to graduate, get out, get a job, and then you too will see the 20% taken out of your paycheck. And you'll look at that pay stub, I hope, and really analyze it. And, you learn to live within, in my opinion, this is a Kimism, the most virtuous thing you can do is to learn to live within your means, in fact, under your means. Because when you can do that, then you're going to find creative ways to have joy and happiness, and you're not going to buy into this Hollywood thing. If you have money, you get to be celebrated. No, it's if you have integrity, and if you've taken care of your family, and if you've given it the best that you can give, and still have a little left over, then you're celebrated. Okay? Why? Because everything else is just a puff of air. What you will create with your hands will not only give you the integrity and the sustainability to you, but it will give it to your family also. And how many people do we know, that, have made it big only to have a crapped out family? You want to have it all. And so by having it all, you have to plan appropriately and live. And you guys in your generation are more balanced than I am. Okay? The old adage that kind of came up with millennials was, we don't live to work, we work to live. Yeah, it is true. And I got to tell you, my generation, we were all about work. But I want to go over some things that I think are going to make a difference for you. And I am not a certified financial planner, okay? I am not a CFP, okay? I don't claim to be one, but I do want to expose you to a couple things that hopefully, and what I'm hoping for you is what I hoped for me, and that was to be able to age where you have options. Okay, so we've already established that aging is a bummer, aging without money is a bigger bummer, but we haven't established, the reason why you're in school right now is the same reason I was in school, is because with an education, it might not get you more. There's a lot of tradespeople that make far more than what we make. There's a lot of tradespeople that have those creative minds, and you know what I'm saying? But we have, I don't want to say more options, but we have options. And the more options that you have, the less stress as you age you will feel. Okay? Case in point. I go back to school. I think, okay, yeah, I do want to get my master's. Eventually I do want to teach. I had been working at a hospital for, most of my career. I wasn't necessarily looking to get out of the hospital, but honestly, I became dissatisfied with what I was seeing around me and when you get that feeling, you know that you have to leave. Okay? And so I thought, I'm going to try teaching. So I go into teaching, and, here I am, yay, I have my master's, and the economy tanks.
Big rip. I was there when that economy tanked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was the first time that I can honestly say that I felt compassion for people who wanted to work who couldn't get a job. Part of it was my age. Part of it was that I was kind of overeducated. Part of it is that people didn't want to hire me because within my community, they knew I was the hospital administrator. So they were a little, is she going to steal my job kind of thing. And honestly, I went back after, a pretty successful career as a night nurse working med-surg, because that was the only job I could get. And I was like, you know what? Money is money, and I am not going to let that stop me. Do I want the difference of, I'm just making up a figure, 70, 80,000 or zero? Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out if you work and can get that, go for it. So I did. And then at that point, I really had always wanted to do OB. My girls were older. I knew that my daughter-in-law couldn't have children. And I thought, you know what, I want to be around kids. I just something, very effervescent about that. And so I did, and I loved it. So I started applying for OB. And I have to tell you, they said, okay, if you're really interested, go take this class. It's a year long. It's at Eisenhower. It's 4 hours. And I thought, I think that they were thinking that I would say, I really don't want it that much. And I said, okay, where do I sign up? How much do I have to pay? I want to get on with this. I really want to do this. So I took that class. You had to pass it, and it was a tough class, I do have to say. And typically these type of classes are you just show up and you get your CEUs. This one you had to pass the test to do everything, and we were tested. It was just like really this class. And I got that, and I was then faced with being an older woman, and everyone knew, just because of the way you talk, handle yourself, whatever, that you'd been a nurse for a long time, and here I was in OB. Okay, now OB has the fewest amount of lawsuits, but the most money in lawsuits. I knew this, and I knew that I had to really know my stuff so that I didn't get into a problem like that. But I was in there, and because I, am, the age that I was, people thought I had been in OB my whole career. And so then asking for help, they thought that I was kind of playing with them, when I really wasn't. I was very sincere. What does this mean? How does it? I remember doing exactly what I share with, I don't have you guys in clinical, but I went into that clean utility room, and everything that I didn't know what it was for, I took it and started looking it up. And the nurses that I worked with would kind of like foo-foo me off, but the registry nurses didn't know anything about me, and so those would be the ones that I would ask, the travelers, and I would sit and talk to them and try to, gain more knowledge, more understanding, more comfort. And I have to say, 6 years later, I had a really great career in OB, totally loved it. By that time, the economy was picking up, and it kind of gave me a few more options. The reason why I went into that long story is because normally when that happens to somebody, their retirement tanks. Okay, when you have to go out and reinvent yourself and kind of figure out what you're going to do, you start living off of your savings, the credit cards go up, and then you're at ground zero, but 5, 6 years older. And that's not a place where I want you to be. So we're going to talk about a little bit, and honestly, I just know a little, but I feel like I have enough knowledge to get your aspirations wet so that you will seek out me. Okay? So I want to write. Okay, a pension. You have to go to work anyways, right? You know, we're all going to get up and, come to work. But why not get up and go to work where they're paying you not only a paycheck to work, but a future paycheck to work? Is that not cool? So that is why Patton is such a lovely place of employment. The VA is such a great place of employment. A school district is such a great place of employment because they're going to pay you your salary, what you rightfully earned, and then they're going to give you a pension so that when you're at a certain age that you can start to collect and not go to work. I have to tell you, this is the best gig going. Okay, I got to tell you, my husband collects a pension. He's at home right now, taking care of things around the house, getting things ready for us to go up to the cabin this weekend. And he's also collecting a full paycheck. He has 41 years at the same place of employment, collecting his check and he collected a pension. He's actually collecting less than he could have been, but, I'm thankful that he loves me, and in the event of his death, I still collect his pension. Isn't that a lovely place for me to be in? You know what I'm saying? So then, the VA, the patent. Okay, now I gotta tell you, you get your job in the first 10 years, it's exciting, it's thrilling. The next 10 years, you're kind of like, when you get into your 50 years, like, oh my gosh, do I ever get to get off of this treadmill? Save heart and remember this conversation. You will. I can't believe that my husband got up every day for 41 years and went to that same place. And some days I remember, and we were talking this morning coming in, he goes, it's so great. He goes, we used to go up to the cabin. How did we fit it all in? And both of us still work. And I was like, yeah, that seems wild. I said, Wayne, I remember when we were talking about your retirement, and a year and a half just seemed like, oh my gosh, and it just poof, went away. And now I'm kind of standing in those shoes. And now I have to tell you, part of the reason why it's exciting is, yes, my parents were always fearful, and most of the people that you take care of are fearful because they feel like they're going to outlive their money. That's how my parents were. My mom, I told you, is 93, still doing great, psychologically or physically, psychologically, and financially. Okay? My mom had a pension. My mom was retired Navy. Okay, so she has her pension. Okay, but anyways, so you get that just by virtue of every day walking in the door. Where I was going is that at some point, because see, there's no difference between you and I mean this sincerely when I say this. I just happen to be older and have more experience than you. But that's the only difference. So I know that when I was about 50-ish in there, I wanted to get off the treadmill. I am so thankful I stayed on the treadmill. If I would have gotten off the treadmill, I would be looking at my retirement very dismally. And so you're going to get there too. And there's an old proverb, or maybe it's in Proverbs, where it says, just get up and go to work every day. Just get up and go to work. Get up and go to work. And interesting enough is I remember hearing a sermon one time, and I too get to have my thoughts and my feelings, okay? Just the same way that you get to have yours and you can share them. I get to share mine too, okay? And it was on, nowhere in the Bible does it talk about retirement. And that kind of hit me weird, like, wow, we're meant to get up and go to work. We're meant to get up and go to work. You know, to be a contributor, to make the day better at the end because you were there in that day. Okay? So anyways, a pension. So let's say, now if, I'm just guessing that if you were to put in 30 years at Patton, 30 years at some state hospital, 30 years at a school district, you would probably make in your pension at least 60%, at least, probably more, but I'm going to go conservative, of your paycheck. Okay? Now you've already mastered living within your means. In fact, just a little bit beneath your means, so that you don't become, you know, a flash in the pan. You know what that is? You know, here today, gone tomorrow. We here in this room want to go for longevity. And we also want to go for having it all. How do you have it all? You pace yourself. Okay, you pace yourself. You're mature about it. You don't expect immediacy. You realize that things have to come with time and grit. Yeah, Declan?
I don't want to cut you off so you lose your point, but I know you're driving the point home about what you do for me, saving your money, stack. But I know earlier you mentioned how you went back to school, going from administrator all the way down, and then you said that you work like med-surg, I'm sure something that's better than no money and stuff like that. But can you lightly explain how the recession was in 08 and how that heavily impacted the medical field?
Okay, in 08, Enron, which was one of the biggest corporations in the world, and if anyone is old enough to add to this, please, because I'm not claiming to be a historian either, but I did live through this. So Enron fell, and how it fell, how it ultimately fell, was that the guys at the top were a bunch of idiots. They really weren't running the company. They were just showing up in their suits and acting the part, but they weren't getting involved with the company to make the company have sustainability. Okay. At the same time, the government released you could get a loan just by fogging a mirror. Okay, you could go in there, fog a mirror, and they'd say, okay, here's $100,000, go buy your house. Well, it takes more to fog a mirror when you put that into monthly payments, right? So then, as Enron collapsed, all of these people were not able to make their mortgage payments, and so then the banks collected on they took the collateral, which was their home or their car or whatever that they had not really. Today, when you go for a loan, and prior, okay, you know this, Jacob. I'm in the middle of applying for a loan. I want to buy another place in Big Bear, okay? So I had to show them 2 years of my federal tax returns. I had to give them 2 months of my bank statements. I had to give them Wayne's letter of pension, of his awarding of his pension, of his Social Security. I had to give them all of my not all, but the last quarterly statements of all of my investments. And then I might have to give them some more stuff. Okay, so why did they do that? They want to see, who is this chick? Who is this man? Can they make that payment every single month? Okay, then they have these letters, And then now they want to see it in my checking account. And then they want to see, what else am I using my checking account for? Okay, so then when people went in and they didn't have to, the rules weren't strict, well, 6 months later, oh, I don't want to pay it. Oh, I lost my job. Oh, it was flaky people applying for large amounts of money. And so then all of this happened simultaneously. And we've talked a little bit about this class, but when you start getting up, when you're at 15% interest rate, okay, right now interest rates are right around 6-ish right now. When you get, things stop, the whole economy stops. There's other things like fuel and that make the economy stop, but what happened in 2008 is the whole economy stopped. Every hospital stopped hiring nurses. All the school districts stopped hiring teachers. If someone retired, they weren't replaced. You would go into McDonald's and no one would be in there because no one could afford a hamburger in 2008. It was hard. They say, I could go on, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So anyways, the economy tanked. And there I was. Oh, I have my master's. Yay. Look at me. Oh, I can't get a job. You know what I'm saying? The economy went upside down, and it doesn't matter if I can do whatever. It doesn't matter. No one's hiring. So, and I was very disheartened. I went to multiple hospitals, called all my friends, you know what I'm saying? And nothing. This is a true story. I had applied at San Gorgonio Hospital twice before. Wayne and I were up there. This is a true story. I'm just telling you how it went down. And I was, feeling heavy and just like, oh, Wayne, I don't know, I can't believe this is happening. And, all this time I've said rude things about other people that, acted like they wanted a job. Maybe they couldn't get a job and they were feeling as rejected and despondent as I'm feeling. And Wayne said, you know what, Kim, let's pray. We were in a parking lot. We prayed very earnestly together. And he goes, you know what, Kim, we're going to drive over to San Gorgonio and you're going to go in there again. I said, Wayne, I've already been there twice. I'm happy to go again, but really? I went in, literally put lipstick on, did my hair, brushed it. I'm over the top with myself anyways, but went in there and came out with a job. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you, Wayne, thank you. And I was, very thankful to have that night med-surg nurse with all the new grads, to have a paycheck. I was. So did I answer it a little bit? What happened in 2008?
I was just trying to see how that everyone deferring on their loans and how it impacted the economy, how that really
Went down
affected
to
the hospitals.
Yeah. Yeah, no one was hiring. Man, if a nurse left, see ya, was not replaced. And that wasn't just in the hospital or the school, it was all over. And then as people went out of the job pool, they were just trying to stabilize it. And the saying that they say that, you always work for someone richer than you. Be thankful there's rich people. I gave you a job, and that's true. Okay, but anyways, back to the conversation at hand. So this pension is great. And let's just say that you are going to get 60% of your pay. And honestly, it might be a little higher.
I think it's 80.
Is it? Okay. I'm going to keep it at 60 because I want to drive home a point. And I know that that's low. But thank you for validating of what I'm saying, okay? So then, deferred comp. This is, and we've talked lightly about this, but your facility, because you're in this chair and because you're going to pass your state boards, and that's why we're so weird about how you look, hours, time, and all of this. okay, is why. Because we, as a faculty, as a school, are critiqued on your passing rate. Can you see, do you see? I mean, I care about you anyways, but do you see how I have more of an interest that you pass, that you do good? That when I say, you know, here's the questions, I really don't want to do that. Kind of hurts me, to be totally honest with you. And I always, well, I'm not going to go there, but anyway, so, but I know that if I don't take a stand, then you're going to slack off, and you're going to think this is a joke, and you're going to get to your state boards and not pass them. So that's why we are all collectively, as instructors, kind of weird about certain things. Okay, but anyway, so you're going to get that job, and they want to keep you. Why? Because it costs them money, and you have a license, and it's not like they can go out on the street and pull in 10 people to help replace you. They have to find someone with that license to replace you. So all of a sudden, if this is the length or the width or the volume of their hiring pool, it just shrunk to this, right in between my hands, because they have to have someone with that license. Do you see where I'm going with this? So in order to keep you, and then they have to train you and hire you, and now we're talking thousands of dollars. You know, $6,000 to $10,000 for them to get you where they want you to be. Because when you leave here, yes, you're ready for your job, but you're at bare minimum qualifications. So they have to bring you up to speed. So they're going to say to you, listen, we have this area over here that we've already set up, and if you want to put in some of your money into this, we'll take it from your paycheck and put it over here for you, and then you don't have to pay taxes. So then, and I don't know, you know, at one time I did, but I don't know right now, but hypothetically, let's say that you're going to make $50,000. And let's say from 45 to 50, you're going to pay 20% in taxes. And then from 40 to 45, you're going to pay 12% in taxes. Well, what you try to do is you try to get your income down to here, you know, at, you know, if it's $45,000, you try to get it down to $44,999, so that you can take that 8% and put it into your deferred comp, and that's the money that you're living less than your wages. Do you see what I'm saying? So now you get to spend your whole paycheck because you've taken care of yourself for the future. Then you pay less in taxes that year. And then over here, when you're older, the idea is when you draw on it, then you pay taxes, but you're making less money, supposedly, at that point. Yeah?
And this is through your job too?
This is through your job too. So that day that you're going to go to orientation, and typically the first day everyone's there, and then the second day the licensed people will be there, and they're going to go over all the policies that you need to know to keep yourself out of legal trouble. And remember, if you don't follow their policies, then you're not under their insurance. And when SHIT hits the fan, they try to find ways that you're not under their insurance. So that's why it's always good to have your own liability insurance, but that's another subject, okay? So for right now, they're going to offer you this, and it's great because it's going to pull your income down. That's the money that you don't get to see, that you are now living beneath your means.
So you mean like pre-tax dollars and tax dollars?
Yeah.
But I know like that, like my job, like they match up to like 3% and the next 2, they do half, and then so people.
We're going to get to that. We're We're gonna get to that. Now, at that job, you have two retirement streams coming in. You have your pension and you have your deferred comp. Okay, so two streams coming in. Oh, I'm sorry?
We have a difference between, safety retirement.
Safety? I'm not familiar with that term. A safety retirement. I don't know what that is. Does anyone know what a safety retirement is?
I don't know, it's safe.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Okay, so back to this. So now you have your deferred comp. And so let's just call this 8%. Okay, 8%. That's going to be 8% of your future retirement. Then they are also going to offer you, because you're in this chair. Okay, now remember, they already know that they're getting a slice above the medium in society with you. They already know that. How do they know that? Do you notice how, I mean, we have a lot in our class, but this is pretty few. You know what I'm saying? Look at all your friends that are out there. You're in here. So they know that you're, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, okay? It's just I'm stating the facts the way they are. So they know they're getting a slice above the average person, and they also know that they're getting a person with a license that they have to have in order to keep their doors open. So they're going to offer you, and it will have a different name, okay? A 401k is what everyone hears because of the TV. But sometimes it's a 453b. It depends on what kind of organization and what rules they have. And then that's when they're going to say what Devlin was speaking of. And that is, if you give us 3% of your income, we'll match that by, and sometimes, you know, for the higher echelon, sometimes they match at 3%. Typically for our level, they'll match at 1.5% to 2%. Okay, so then you are giving 3% of your income, and let's just say that they match it 1.5. So for every $3 that you put in, they're going to give you 1.5% added. This is where vesting comes in. When you are at orientation, you need to keep your ears open. They'll go over that second day all of the policies, and then they're going to go over all of your benefits. Give me 1 second. They're going to say vesting. You want to know, is it 3 years or 5 years? Those are the two standard ones. At 3 years, you walk away with all of this money if it's 3 years. At 5 years, you walk away with all of this money if it's at 5 years. So that's where we've talked about in the past. You don't want to quit, 6 months before you're vesting. You suck it up and you stay there because you want to walk out the door with everything that's entitled to you. Okay, what are you going to say?
Is 3% the max that they'll match you?
Typically.
Okay.
I haven't heard of too much more
Okay.
that they'll match. Okay, so now we have 3, 4, 4.5 here. Okay, Social Security. If you, and I always thought it would be defunct when I got there, and honestly, that's why we took Wayne's right away, is because we wanted to get on the books. And I did a cost analysis. Wayne retired at 63, and he has to be 72 when it is no longer cost effective for him to have taken it early. And so we sat down. How do you feel about that? At 72 now, we're going to be upside down on your Social Security. Upside down meaning we're still going to get the same amount, but because in Social Security, if you take it earlier, they give you lower amounts. And then for my age group, to take it and get the full amount, you have to be 67 and 8 months old. Or 66 and 8 months, I've forgotten, one or the other. But the point being is that Wayne was going to hit that break-even point after doing a cost analysis on it at 72 years old. I said to Wayne, listen, why are we buying this place? Yes, I'm buying it for my grandchildren. I honestly am. but I need a tax write-off. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm concerned about the interest rate, but either I'm gonna pay it in interest or I'm gonna pay it in taxes. I would rather pay it in interest and have a place up in Big Bear than pay it in taxes and have nothing, right? So that's why, you know, and I hear other women, other people say, oh, you wanna go into retirement with everything paid off. Well, we do have all of our secure things paid off. But you know what? I don't want to go into retirement and have, you know, after I've already paid 20%, owe the federal government another $15,000. And I'm not bragging how much I make. That's the reality of it with Wayne and I.
Selling a business.
So I would rather have a place. What did you say?
Selling a business and you get. those
Yeah,
tax breaks.
exactly. That's kind of what I'm doing by buying this place. It's not as good as that. It doesn't give me as many write-offs. But I'm not looking to expand. Okay, I think I shared with you a little bit. I'm in the kitchen, the cafeteria at Arrowhead, and I meet this nurse, and we're sitting there, and my nurses were doing the flu shot, so, you know, I met her and kind of watching them. They were running the flu clinic. And she was talking to me, and she was saying, can you believe, okay, now this is not a political conversation. This is not a political conversation. I'm telling you, I'm reporting to you what she said to me. She said, can you believe Trump, that jerk, you know, he doesn't want to show his tax return because he probably didn't pay taxes. And I said to her, well, do you like paying taxes? Well, no, I just have to. Well, what do you mean you have to? Well, because, it's just, I do. They just, they take it out of my paycheck. I have nothing to say about it. And I said, well, do you own your house? Well, no, I can't afford a down payment. She's a nurse, an RN, okay? And I said, oh, okay. And so I start just asking her questions. How much could you save if you wanted to save? And we kind of got to the end of the conversation where she was like, that Trump, he's a smart guy. He's not paying taxes. That's what we all don't want to do, okay? That the system is set up for you not to. If you take advantage of the loopholes, we will all pay taxes. He pays taxes, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know, but you will pay. But the idea of it is, do you want to pay through the nose or do you want to pay what's comfortable? Because there's little things that you can do if you're willing to get off your duff to go do them that will pull you back, and they're legal. No one's doing anything illegal. And I'm not wanting you to do anything. But I am saying you have to critically think this through. You're being taught, you pretty much came into this program knowing how to critically think. Now you're just aware that you know how to critically think. And now you have to ask yourself the questions. How do I want this to come down? Because it's dependent upon me. So do I want to take charge of this? Or do I just want to float in the wind and just land wherever the wind places me? Do you see where I'm going with this? So getting back to Social Security. So I said to Wayne, at 72, we're still going to pay taxes. So why have a higher amount to pay more taxes on and then forsake the joy that the money would have brought us now? I said, let's take it and, enjoy it and spend it, and, okay, now listen to this. This is important. The antidote for greed, because no one wants a greedy person around them, okay? The antidote for greed is to give. You figure out who you want to give to, what you want to give to. Some of you aren't, obviously now, but as you get, into this, my girls lived with me, and my two grandkids lived with me for 5 years, both all, in our house, in the house they grew up in, okay? Not that I'm, this is more than I want to divulge, but So they didn't get married, they had the kids, you know, blah, 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 and so now and I really wanted them to nurse, to breastfeed. And I said, why don't you come home, live with us for a couple years, get it together, figure out what's going on, and then, go make your way. Well, honestly, I had to kick both of them out. And I should have kept it 2 years, okay? But it just kind of kept going, and I kind of honestly lost track of it. And time I got them out, there was some hard feelings there. Because I was like, no, you're out of here. You don't get it. Oh, Mom, are you? Yeah, I am. You're out of here. And then Wayne is in the background. I'll let him stay. And I'm like, no, they're gone. 5 years, they're almost 40. Get out of here, And so it took each one of them about 18 months to kind of, come back around a little bit. But now they're happy that I did that because they're enjoying their life. They are taking charge. I shared with you about Brooke, how well she's doing. Heather's doing equally as well, but, kind of maybe a little bit behind, but, that's okay. But where I'm going with this is Social Security. So Social Security will give you about, I'm going to say 20% of your income, okay, if you are a faithful worker. Okay, so 20%. So what do we have? I should have lined this up. So we have 68 here, and then 20, I'm just going to call it 25. So that's 13, 6, 7, 8. Look at, you're at 93% of your income.
So by the time we get there, Social Security might be gone.
It might be gone, and I thought it would be gone for me too, to be totally
They've
honest.
been saying that for years.
They would have a revolution if they got rid of Social Security. We
They
still
would.
may have one.
Yeah.
We still may have one. But that is going to, you know what I'm saying? People like all of us, that are your elders, we've paid into this. This is not an entitlement program. We've paid into it. Were you going to say something?
Yes, please. For mine, I know CITES not pay with the Social Security.
Who does it?
CITES, they have something called
Okay,
safety.
you have a waiver against it. Okay, so let's take that off, that 20%. So you would be at 73%. Okay, so what are you going to do with the money that you didn't put into Social Security? You should be investing it.
No, they have something called safety. Just as Denise was saying, they have something called safety.
But I wanted to ask too, back to the 401k, now is a Roth IRA just a label or does it grow your money quicker? Because that's what I opened it.
Okay, good for you, smart woman. I love smart women. I think it's so cool. And not because I'm a woman, but because I want you to know, I am a faithful wife. I understand that every good organization needs a hierarchy. And when you go out of that hierarchy, you're undermining the facility. And so that's why I place Wayne at the top. I do that. Why? Because I want our family to run smoothly, and I know that is what facilitates it. So when I say I want a strong woman, I want a strong, smart woman. Okay, and it is us that keeps women. Women are the ones that keep the family cohesive. Okay, like it or not, that's our role, that's our job, and that's a big role and that's a big job. Men protect the home, are more far-sighted. Karen the other day said to me, she said, correct me if I'm wrong, she said, well, that's kind of cool, you're the more academic one and your husband is more the hands-on, together, that's a good team. And I said, well, I gotta tell you, Wayne's retirement is better than mine. I'm running off of his shirt tails. You want to hear why? This is what I said, and this is true. I told you Germans are very competitive. Okay. Well, here I am. So I would get my quarterly statements, and of course I would see his, and of course I'd go, check it out, Wayne. You know what I'm saying? And I would be kind of proud. I would. I wasn't being mean, being spirited. I was just proud and sharing it, and his was high too, but just luckily lower than mine. Well, Wayne, being the man that he is, he went, and I knew he was doing this, and we were talking about it, it wasn't secretive, but he went and got all of his stuff on his phone. And I told you he worked with about 40, 50 men. They would sit on their breaks and compare who was getting what and who was making what. And right there on his phone, he would change it. Wow, guess who's making more now? I never did that. You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, let the CFP think about that. You know, I'm fine. You know, I don't, well, no, Wayne was on it. Well, then all of a sudden his were like at mine. And then they were, and then he was like, check it out, Kim, look at this. You know, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's great. You know? And so I'm writing off of his shirt tails. Now, I've brought a lot to the team, but he carried it through. Okay. Now, this is another thing I want to say, and I think I've said this before. Both partners are needed within that family. They're both needed, and I would say, you know, if I'm at work, when I was hospital administrator, I wouldn't get home a lot of nights till 9:30, 10 after med exec meetings, you know, and I'd have to be the last one to leave and shake hands and, you know, okay, yeah, you know, so I had, you know, I was there. Well, who was holding down the fort? Yeah. You know, it took both of us to make it happen. And now, you know, he's at home and I'm here. You know what I'm saying? It's taking both of us to get this cabin sold, but he's taking, you know, the front lead on it. Now, I'll cry the whole way up there. I'm just joking. But, you know, you do what you got to do and you suck it up and you be the person that you know you need to be. Okay? But that doesn't mean that you deny your feelings or your thoughts, you know. But I just know that, okay, you know, we can't play right now. We've got to buckle down and make this happen. Okay, so does everyone, this is just a start on it. Okay, now this 73, Verna, yeah, you'll take that Social Security money and, you know, build it yourself.
Mrs. Smith, what I know is they paid into another thing called the safety, which has nothing to do with social security. They call it a big apps or something.
What do they call it? What is safety? Is that, what are you saying?
They call it safety.
Oh,
Instead of,
safety?
yeah, instead of social security.
Oh, okay, okay. So they have another avenue for that. Yeah, well, that's great, because you know what? With Social Security, we all get screwed. You're gonna put in a, you know, 230,000 and you'll be lucky if you'll see 160,000 of it, okay?
Is pension only for state jobs?
Typically. It's yeah. I know you know a lot, Jacob.
You can actually have multiple 401ks,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you can actually pay, the more you pay into them, the better they pay out in the future. So you can put in up to 10% per, and by the time you retire, that 4.5 can turn into something closer to like 25 to 30.
Okay, so, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Where Jacob was going, if you're not astute, I was not astute with my money. Okay, I put it there and I just thought, okay, deal with it. Okay, every 9 years, everything doubled. Okay, so the money I put in 1 month, 9 years later, it doubled. The next month I put that money in, 9 years later, it doubled. Do you see what I'm saying? So it kind of had a growth. If you are just average intelligence, i.e. Wayne, his money grew every 7 years. He doubled his money every 7 years. You know, just by talking to the guy, seeing what's going on, getting that input. That's how he outgrew me. Okay? And so, and that kind of gets to where you're going. You can have multiple vehicles going on under that category. The Roths, yeah.
So when it comes to retirement, isn't it weird kind of how it works? Because they'll tell you to count your years a certain way, because let's say somebody has 33 years in their business. They started in March. But by the state or wherever you work for, they go by 40 months in, like July. That's when they start counting retirement. So really, you don't
Okay, what we're talking about here is fiscal years.
Yeah.
You need to know when the time comes, how your institution, how they run their fiscal year. Some organizations are January to December. Most organizations are from July to June. So you want to, and this is another little trick that I'm going to throw out. This is, I think, probably important to get started. You want to, okay, so you guys are going to graduate in August, right? Okay, so that's kind of a bummer for you because you've missed a company's fiscal year. So then you'll take your state boards, you'll know probably, if you're smart, right, in 3 months you want to be taking that. Studies show that within 3 months you have the highest rate of passage.
I have a quick question about that. Can we sign up for the state boards before we graduate, or we have to
No.
wait for our graduation date?
You have to wait for your graduation date, and everything has to be cleared. You don't get to just go in there and take the test. They have to deem you to take the test.
So you have to put your graduation date when you're signing up for the test. Like you can't go online and sign up for.
No, you cannot. You cannot. You have to have, okay, this is how it's gonna work. All of your transcripts, all of your hours, everything, at the end, that's when Maria is really busy. She's responsible for, and that's why I'm weird and I have my little list, who owes me what, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Why? Because if the board, remember how I said you never want to get caught in the board? Just keep your nose clean, fly under the radar, do what you're supposed to, and don't get involved with them. Because if you get involved with them, it's kind of like, in America, how it's supposed to be, it's not right now, but how it's supposed to be, is that there is a crime committed, and then they find the person who committed the crime. Right now what they're doing is they're taking the person and finding the crime finding that person first, and finding the crime that they did. Well, that is how the board has always operated. Okay? Every one of us in this room is human. Every one of us in this room has been young. Every one of us in this room has done something foolish, myself included. Okay, that's just, the board looks at that, and instead of finding the crime and finding the person, they have you and they try to pin a crime on you with something that you've done, which we all have done something, so we are all guilty. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why you don't want to get involved with them, okay? Truth be told, that's it. So, back to the question is, what was the question? I'm sorry, what got
How do
me
you
off?
sign up for the board?
Oh, how do you sign up for the board? Thank you, Karen, for keeping me on task. So what happens then is Maria doesn't want the board to come down on this school. I don't. None of the instructors do. Truth be told, the program, at any school, they could close it if they wanted to. That's how much power they wield. So we're super careful with what we tell them so that nothing comes up. And that's another reason why we're weird, is we're protecting this school, we're protecting our paycheck, we're protecting this program. And we all know that it's up to each one of us individually to do that. Okay? So, then you graduate. Maria gets busy. She starts pulling all of this together. She then says, and that's why you need to self-report if there's something in your background that is going to keep you from taking that test. So that she can right now start getting letters, start right now compiling things, right now kind of put you under the microscope and make you look as good as you can look to the board. Because they have to okay that you can take the test. And they're okaying it by what we report. You see? So if we know we've held you to a high standard, then it all is good. But if not, then not so good. So then you get to take the state boards. Okay, just because you graduate does not mean that you get to take state boards. I want you to know that, okay? So then you get to take state boards, and you want to take those within 3 months of your date of graduation. Okay, now listen. Mary Ann Klingstrand Klingstrand, is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teacher. She taught this class for 27 years. She worked at Patton simultaneously. I'm guessing she worked at Patton for 27 years. I don't really know. But anyway, she teaches a review class. Make sure you take her review class, and it's at this school.
That's free, or we have to.
Yeah, you have to pay for it. You have to sign up and take that class. Mary Ann Klingstrand.
And how long is the class, the whole semester?
No, it's like 3 weekends.
Oh,
It's like 3 weekends. Take that test, or take that class for a review, and then start studying, and after you graduate, and then you can, and when Maria releases you, then she sends everything to the board, they analyze it, and then they say, okay, you can take it, you can take it, you can take it. Pardon, do they call you? I don't know how that works. I'm sure they don't call you, I'm sure it's. Oh, well, then you'll go to a test center. There's different test centers all over, and then you'll go to a test center, and you'll sign up with them. The test gets released to them, they proctor the test, and then it gets sent. And I guess that you know pretty quick after how you test it. Okay, is that everything that I wanted to say? Yeah, Karen.
I was just gonna say, we take a quick break.
Yes, we can take a quick break. What time is it? I didn't bring, as soon as I realized I was like, 7:42. Let's take a break until 8 o'clock, and then we'll come back and talk about, school email or Canvas? I'll probably have to turn everything into the document.
I figured it out.
How are you? I'm good, Ellie. How are you? Good. Maria? No, Maria won't be here until about 3:30, or excuse me, 8:30.
Oh, I was like, 3:30.
Yeah, that's kind of late. You look cute. Look at you.
I'm trying to decide on the color for shoes.
I know, yeah.
Put them on when we go to the cold room.
But that's what you call planning ahead, right?
I believe Canada, I took them all, I threw them in the passenger seat, and then they would just accumulate. So I had to take like 3 or 4 pairs out of my car, and then this morning I had one left over, I knew they were in there, so I'm like, okay, I'm wearing sandals out, I have the socks in my pocket, here we go.
That's good, okay. Yesterday was not a good day. So that's, we'll stop, all of us need to stop.
Well, then we thought one person was telling you guys that the message wasn't going all the way through to you guys because we couldn't stop the middle. It was like the middle of our lesson.
Things like this happen. I've been on both sides. Been on the side where I create it and on the side where I have to live it. And that's why I don't get upset. Okay, go ahead for it. Okay, so anyways, what we want to talk about right now, and we'll spend bed bath. Okay, so we're hygiene. Okay, to all of us, it's not a big deal, right? Because we do it for our children. You know, we turn on the spigot and there's water. We can, get in and out of the bathtub. All of these things, but not everyone can get in and out of the bathtub, right? What happens if you're caring for someone that can't lift their leg that high? What happens if you're caring for someone that doesn't have stability and they have to worry about drowning in a bathtub? You know, so you've got to think through all of that stuff for them. What happens, does everyone in this room know what a contracture is? A contracture is literally if you do not have movement of your arms and not an overly extended amount of time, but that if you do not move, your hand, your legs will get where they cannot extend. And they're frozen in that position. And you will go to try to lift up their finger. Try to lift up my finger. It won't lift up. Okay? When someone has, and that is a result of neglect. Okay? Because we know that we have to give what is called passive range of motion. So when someone is unable to move themselves, you literally have to move their arms, and you will notice that if the person on the shift before you didn't do it, that their arms are going to be a little tighter. And therefore it's even more incumbent upon you to do it, and to do it thoroughly, and to do it until you see that freedom return.
Does it hurt them when you do that?
Pardon?
Does it hurt the patient?
Once a person has contractures, you cannot give them range of motion. Okay? So you have to find the areas that do have range of motion. Because maybe their hands have it, their wrists have it, but you can maybe start doing a little bit of their fingers. You have to figure out what can be done. Okay? So typically during a bed bath is when that's a great, and we've talked about that we own skin. We own it. So this is a good opportunity to examine the person, to really look in every crevice and see what's going on with their skin. Okay, another thing, some of our larger folks, we've already talked that bacteria loves moist, dark areas. Well, fungus does, and fungus really loves skin. Bacteria does too. Bacteria loves more the in part of our skin. Fungus loves kind of more the exterior. Okay, the internal is what I should have said. So you need to pull those rolls apart. You need to look. And I'm not talking about being weird. You're looking because you're trying to help that person, right? Okay, so like a little baby. You know, how many times does a mom, when they're wiping a baby, just kind of look at that little anus? Looks in between the legs. Little babies have a lot of folds. Well, we need to do that with our older folks or our folks that can't do it for themselves.
When babies spit up, they get like a little rash and then a little hole. My first one, I was like, what's wrong with it? My mom's like, what?
Yeah, like cottage cheese over there, And yeah, you have to look. Okay, if the person hasn't been circumcised, you need to pull back that foreskin and make sure that you wipe the head of the penis so that it's clean. People with contractures aren't going to be able to do that. People with cerebral palsy, anyone that's lost their fine motor skills is not going to be able to do that for themselves, and you're going to do that for them. Okay? So I have had people in the class say, have you ever had any weirdness going on? Yes, sometimes there is weirdness going on, and you are mandated to report it, even if you're reporting it on another psych tech, another nurse, another whoever, okay? Really, this is like with a child. It should be a calming experience, and it should almost be a reverent experience for the person. And they shouldn't have any fear of anyone violating them, right? And it does happen, and so you need to be on guard. So then, if you have bathed a person and all of a sudden they're being more withdrawn, well, you need to start asking why. What's going on here? Who bathed them before? What's happening? If all of a sudden, you were, bathing them and they were real talkative and they're super solemn. Or they would, when you would get the bottom of their feet, they would kind of pull back and all of a sudden they're not. Okay, so there's little subtleties that are happening that you need to be well aware of so that you can act in the best interest for that person. Okay, so bed baths. We've talked a little bit about this, but you want to provide, and we're going to go over this today in lab, but you want to provide for the person's modesty. Okay? Women, typically after they have had given birth, up until that time, super modest. After that time, they're a little bit more open, but still super modest by nature. Wouldn't you say, women, that we are? Guys tend to kind of just, be a little bit more uninhibited in that area, if you will. But either way, we are providing for it. So what you are cleaning is the only thing that is exposed while you're cleaning it. Then you put the bath blanket over it, and then you expose another area and you clean them. If they are cognitive, and I mean fully cognitive and able, what I will say is, let's keep your privates private. That's what I say. I'm going to step out, go ahead and, here's the soap, here's the water, here's everything you need. I'll come back in 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, but this is a really good time because we own skin to really examine their skin. So you are aware of what medications they're taking, right? You're aware of their diagnosis. And then during that bed bath, everything should mesh what you're seeing. Okay, so if someone has bruises, but they're on Coumadin or heparin, you're going to expect that. Okay, now is it in an area that matches the description of how they said they got it? If it's not, then you need to report it. Okay, so because you're seeing their skin. That bruise wasn't there yesterday. Why is it there now? Okay, but if they're on Coumadin and their story matches, you don't report it. Okay? And so how do you get the story? You just ask, is this painful right here? How about over here? How did you get this? Did you fall yesterday? Now, remember, when people are on the drug classification of anticoagulants, and we're going to get to it, we've talked a little bit about it, because heparin is an anticoagulant. Okay, that they're going to bruise easy. So you're expecting it. Someone with cerebral palsy. My dad used to drop at least once a day. It got to where we wouldn't let him walk on cement. Okay, because it was just too much of a risk. You know that. You know if they're unable to transfer and maybe they're bruised on the side that they transfer away from. You know what it's going to look like if they didn't put the brake on right and they transferred and something happened. You're going to become more familiar with the task that we all do, and we don't even think about it. But they have to put a lot of thought into it. And then all of a sudden when you're teaching it and you start breaking it down into all the multitude tasks that they have to understand and do, then you're going to see maybe where a bruise could come. And then now it's explainable. Okay? Another thing that you're going to do during that bed bath is you want to put lotion on. Okay, you don't want to put lotion on areas that are in between the toes. Okay? Because that is going to create a moist environment. But you do want to put lotion on, especially if their skin is dry, on the more flat, long areas. Okay? Older people will have a tendency, I don't want to get into it, but hemostasis, where their legs, their lower legs, will get real scaly and kind of darker in color. you know, you want to particularly pay attention, you know, they're not having a clot there. You can tell because why? With a clot, the leg would be warm. One leg would be a little larger in circumference than the other one. So now you know it's hemostasis, and so you want to rub and, you know, take care of that leg. Okay, my husband has a little hemostasis going on, you know, so not every night, but some nights I'll get the lotion out and, you know, just kind of rub his legs, you know, to try to induce circulation there. Then you're going to notice maybe, okay, his socks were a little too tight. I said, Wayne, he's not diabetic, although he has been in the past pre-diabetic. Wayne, we got to get you diabetic socks. You know, we don't want, you know, this tightness around here. You know, we'll be in the living room. He won't have his recliner up. I'll say, Wayne, put your recliner up. He's not having a problem, but those are little steps that can be done to prevent something 20 years from now, making it worse, okay? I try to have the water cooler for those people. Why? Because when water is hot, I love my water hot, okay? But hot water vasoconstricts. When we take a shower together, the water's a little cooler because I want, you know, more blood flow going for, you know, his legs. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. But I don't want it to be a problem. Okay, so I'm just doing little things now that can help. And that's what you're going to be doing for your clients. Okay, and you might, on your skin care plan, you might make one if you notice something that can be done that you want to see. Now remember, we do little small things, but we do them consistently so they end up making an impact. Okay, in 20 years. Hopefully sooner, but. And then we're also doing passive, okay, so there is passive range of motion and there is active range of motion, okay? Active range of motion is where the person is doing it themselves and you are telling, well, when you're in bed, I want you to roll, do circular motions with your ankle, because that really stimulates everything from the bottom up and starts those muscles to push up against the veins to get more blood flow back to the heart, okay? You know, anything that they can do. You know, you can get them a bed trapeze, and then they can, you know, pull up if they're confined to bed. Or you can get, Maria has one in her office. I said, oh, Maria, why do you have this? And she goes, oh, I broke my arm a couple years ago, and every now and then my arm bugs me, and I'll use it. It really helps. But they're those kind of wide, real plastic, elastic. They have a lot of resistance to them. You put them on a doorknob and you do some range of motion with them, okay? Passive range of motion, that would be examples of active. Passive range of motion is where you are doing it yourself. You are doing it for the person. So, can I borrow your hand? So let's say that George is incapacitated and he's just laying here. Okay, so then I would take his arm up and I would bring it over. I would twirl it around. I would, you know, bend it and bring it up. Okay, this is really much needed, especially when people are older and they're not moving as much, when they're comatose, when they're stuporous. You know, those are things that you need to do. And why are you doing them? To prevent contractures. Another form of a contracture is foot drop. Okay, part of your homework was on foot drop, okay? Once that's that way, then this is how the person walks. This foot is always like that. So they don't have balance, and so they're kind of, you know, they walk weird. And then so when you walk weird, what does that do to your hip? It displaces the muscles of your hip, so now you're going to have hip dysplasia. Okay, so a perfect way to prevent that is either have a footboard on the bed so that they put their feet like this and not like that, or put high-top tennis shoes on them. Okay, so that they don't get that. So we own skin, we're looking at it, okay, and you want it clean. You don't want it dry, but you want the skin clean. I gotta tell you, just a small little difference. I was breaking out on my face, and I'm like, oh, what is this? Oh, it's a stupid mask. Okay, oh my gosh. Okay, but what am I gonna do? I have to wear this stupid mask. Well, I went over to Sprouse's. I talked to the gal about it. She goes, have you ever tried any of that non-soap? I'm like, non-soap? What's non-soap? I gotta tell you, look at my face. You know, it looks great, I think. You probably don't. But anyways, it looks better than it would if I didn't use that non-soap. Let me just put it that way. You know, so you need to find little things. Maybe you put cream on one woman and it really emulsifies her face and makes it very supple. On another woman, it's gonna break out, or person, I should say. Okay, so you need to figure out because we are patient-centered, what's gonna be the best for that patient. Okay, and then you need to apply it. It was very interesting when I was an aide. You know, every person was putting powder everywhere. You know, it was like if you didn't put baby powder, they would sprinkle it on the bed. I never bought into that. And isn't it funny, 20 years later, that was a source of ovarian cancer. Yeah, that powder going, yeah.
Johnson gets sued.
Mm-hmm. But I always, so, you know, what was that? And not that I'm not, you know, you guys know this. I mean, I've flubbed in front of you guys. You've seen it. You know, just what? I think about stuff, though. And this is where reflection, and I can't stress enough to you to reflect back on your own self. How did I handle that? How did I come off? What could have I said? I can't change them, but I can change the way I react to them. Did I react the best for Martha? You know, sometimes I'll have interludes with you and I'll think back on it. And I'll go, you know, okay, what did they say? And I'll go back to my notes. What did they say? Something that most people don't know about them? Oh, okay. And then I'll try to have like little examples of that. You know, you don't know that I'm doing that, but I'm trying to, you know, I mean, it's just, that was a part of my reflection. I can't begin to tell you how many times you maybe said something to me, and I'll go back and talk to Wayne about it. You know, wow, maybe we should try this, you know. This is what the younger generation is thinking, or this is what's going on, or this person has this that they're dealing with. That reflection is au contraire to guys typically, but is more easily for women. Why? Because women, we love to have, Men like to solve things. It's solved, don't have to think about it. Where we will lament on it. And that lamenting is good because it's a form of reflection. So it might be harder for men because of just the difference between us.
Starting route to 11370 Anderson Street.
Okay, so bed making. We're going to learn how to do bed making with an occupied person in
West
it.
on College Drive.
And then we're going to learn how to make.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm glad that you're looking. See, everyone should be thinking of Castle Branch right now. Okay, you've got to get that done. You've got 2 weeks. If it's not done, you don't go to clinical. If you miss a day of clinical, now you're at short hours. And then it falls into that conversation we had earlier. Okay, but anyways, back to this, occupied. So you're going to learn how to make with the person in there by rolling the person, by putting what is needed on the bed, making half of it, having the person roll over what you just did, pull out the sheets, and that's another good time to look at skin. And then, you know, obviously an unoccupied bed is really no big deal, especially these days because they have fitted bottom sheets. Okay, we've talked a little bit about turn, cough, deep breathe. I want to reiterate that at this point because that is our best defense against pneumonia, PNA pneumonia. Turn, cough, deep breathe. I have shared with you that they spend thousands of dollars, definitely not thousands, maybe 8,000 a day to have specialized beds, but thousands of dollars per month on specialized bed to turn patients. So if your facility is having a bed that's doing that, in part that's saying that we weren't doing our job, depending on the circumstances, right? Yeah. If that person comes down with broken skin, you're sloppy. You didn't do your job. Well, why would they have you if you're not doing your job? So that's another telltale sign. And don't think, and this is what they do behind the scenes, when they have something like this go on, they'll pull the charts and they'll see who took care of that patient. And then the next patient, they'll take these people and these people and who are the same people. And then this person had skin break, they'll get that. And then they'll end up with, believe it or not, 3 or 4 that are the same people. And if, say, one of those 3 people is always coming late, and now they're costing the facility money for skin breakdown, and they come late, so now they're costing the facility on overtime, you're going to be out of there. You might not even know that you were ushered out, but you will be out of there. And that is a lot of how they keep track of us. Then they get these surveys from the federal government back, and that's another area. Yeah, my care was okay, but I came home with a bed sore. Do you see where I'm going with that? Then that goes into the mix. This is when you do an incident report and they trend it. You may think that the facility is doing nothing with those incident reports because nothing changes. Well, they're so good you don't even know that it changed. I did risk management, not for super long, but I got to tell you, I know how that side of the hospital works. Not to mention, other areas. So anyways, this is kind of it in a nutshell. Hygiene, oral care. Okay, let's talk about oral care. Oral care, this is going to seem really weird. Okay, I rode this wave, meaning I was a part of the before and after. The CDC sent out to all of the hospitals, we're having a problem with ventilator pneumonia. Ventilator-associated pneumonia, VAP, V-A-P. And they said, okay, everyone that's on a ventilator has to be segregated differently in the chart form and sent to us. Ventilator-associated pneumonia, it's VAP. And you'll see these initials in the hospital, even now. It's ventilator-associated pneumonia. Okay? Okay. So we were like, okay, whatever, we're mandated by law, we have to do it, right? So yeah, okay, one more thing to do. The CDC got all of this information, ran studies on everything, and what they found was that the tube that was going down their throat and then, obviously expanding their lungs was getting bacteria on it. And so the bacteria had a highway right into their lungs. Why was there bacteria on it? Because their teeth weren't being brushed. That's a killer. If you're on a pneumonia, you're one banana peel from your coffin. And now we're giving that person pneumonia? That's like, So that's what they found out. Isn't that wild? So now then, overnight, it became mandated that if you're on a ventilator, it has to be documented that their teeth were brushed 2 times a day, even with that tube down their mouth. We've talked about in this class how a lot of blood dyscrasias, blood abnormalities are picked up by your gums. You have to have your gums stimulated, and you have to have bacteria off of your gums, because why? Oh, here's a great story. Listen to this. I was working in the emergency room, and this guy came in. His teeth were all jacked up, okay? I noticed teeth. I had braces. I'm very much, I don't know. I have an affinity. I recognize people by their teeth a lot of times. This will be case in point. This guy comes into the emergency room. His blood pressure is low. We give him dopamine, it goes up. We take it down, it goes low. We put him, we're titrating his dopamine levels, okay, to keep his blood pressure up. And then the ER doctor would want to start bringing it down, boom, his blood pressure would drop. We would put it back up and he was fine. Finally, the emergency doctor said, you know what, ship him to ICU. I don't know what's going on with this guy. They'll figure it out over there. Obviously, he has a problem. Months later, I'm in the lobby, walking through the lobby of the hospital, and this guy smiles at this guy smiles back, and I'm like, I know those teeth. And I went up to him, I go, you were in our emergency room not long ago, weren't you? I said, you were the guy that the blood pressure kept dropping. Whatever became of that? This is what he told me. He said, I had an abscess in my tooth and it went systemic, and I went into septicemia from an abscess in his tooth. An abscess. An abscess is where you get a pus pocket under your teeth. You know how you go to the dentist and they measure your gum length? Well, what they're doing is that if it recedes too much, then the bacteria has more of an entryway up into under your tooth, and a pocket of pus is an abscess. Pus is bacteria that your body has fought, and now it is lodged there and it can't get out, so it stays there, and then the bloodstream circulates through it, and then it ends up systemic, and then you go septic. Is that wild? From a bad tooth, that happened to that guy. That, is such a good example of how important hygiene is for your teeth. I shared with you last weekend, one of our rentals, my husband and I, we both hate going to this rental, okay? They pay it on time, everything's fine. They're okay people, but we hate going into that house because it reeks of pot. So we go into the house, and my husband won't go alone. He says, I don't want to be around that woman without you there. Why? Because he wants to protect his integrity. And so I said, I get it, not a problem. So we go over there, and the guy comes, shows us the bath. Well, he has no teeth. He's younger than I am, and he has no teeth. And so, Wayne and I are both, down to business and, acting, And then the guy shares with us, yeah, I got implants, and my gums wouldn't hold the implants. He goes, I spent $7,000. Honestly, what was running through my mind, oh, that's why we keep your rent low, so you can do stupid stuff. But that's not what I said. But that's what I was thinking. And then he goes, yeah, I have to, and his wife has like one tooth, in. And he said, I'm going for dentures. I have to get dentures. Well, guess what I know about dentures? Dentures cannot be bone against the denture. Because, you've got to have good gums even for dentures. What is probably going to end up happening to this guy, and he already looks like he has cachexia. And he thinks he's Mr. Big Man Motorcycle. So he's, always talking about, hey, Wayne, and, he's gonna either break a bone on that motorcycle and it's gonna be downhill, or something's gonna happen to him systemically with his mouth.
You should have said something, because they pay your rent.
Well, you know what? I kind of want to sell that house because I'm tired of those people. I'm tired of, they're nice people. I mean, I don't want to, well, anyways, the reason why it bums me out is because their two kids are potheads too. I've seen those kids because they've rented that house for about 15 years. I saw their kids in junior high, and I would see them because I don't live too far from this house. I would see them, walking and, it's not hard to put two and two together. But anyways, the point that I'm bringing up is that your teeth are important. Your teeth, and I've said this too, this is a chinism. How you care for your teeth is an indication to me of how you care for the rest of your body. My teeth aren't the whitest, I don't whiten them, I don't do anything, but I do have to tell you that they get brushed at least once a day. And we all should be doing it twice a day. And most of the time my teeth are brushed twice a day. Okay? And then, one thing, and I didn't bring my water because, it's her, and thank you, Tatiana, for the phone call this morning, I like to carry water. Why do I carry, and I'm more cognizant of that? Well, I have noticed, okay, I don't mean to keep saying this, but as you age, your thirst center decreases. And when your thirst, and I have a tendency to gulp air. I know you've noticed that. And so my mouth gets dry. The drier your mouth is, the more likely you are to have tooth decay. So you need to keep your mouth moist so that you can swallow that bacteria. Okay, and your mouth is one of the dirtiest places on your body. In your house, what is the dirtiest area in your house? The bathroom? Okay, that's fair. I can see why you'd say that. Your vents? Oh yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
The kitchen.
Yeah, it's your kitchen sink, the ring around where things go. That's the dirtiest place, that little area around there. So make sure, you get the comment out and really clean that little ring. Okay, I said that because it reminded me for some reason of teeth, okay, that you need to keep your teeth clean, you need to keep your mouth moist. Okay, now, when you are doing your patient, don't do it, and you shouldn't be doing it with yourself, but you need a soft, bristled brush. You do not want to be hard on your gum line, okay? All of us should have I don't know why they sell hard bristles, but they do, but they're very damaging to the gum line. So you want a soft bristle. What else can you say? Don't you feel better? Have you ever been sick and finally you get into the shower, you have enough energy to get in the shower and clean yourself up, and you're like, oh, I feel better just after. Well, that's how our patients are too, our clients. And that's why we want to keep things clean. Yeah, Aaron?
I don't mean to cut you off, but you think we should talk about that? We gotta be there at 8:45.
No, all right. Thank you. What time is it right now? It's 8:40? Okay, so let's take a look at this. Thank you very much, Aaron. I do appreciate you. Okay, so station 1. Okay, the time's here. And then what we're going to do. Okay, so let's take rotation 1.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what we're going to do. We're going to count 1 to 4. Remember your number. Okay, because then you're going to be in, that's the rotation that you're going to be in, 1 through 4, based on the number that we're going to count off. And then this is where you're going to go. So all of the number 1s in here, we'll start with Sarah. No, excuse me, we'll start with Ellie in room 129, which is at the end of this corridor. And then you're going to go around based on these times. So let's do it, okay? You're 4. You're 4, Georgia. Yeah, you're 4. 2. 4. You're 4. What did you say? Yeah, you're 4.
No, making a group stay. Yeah, that's what she said. Remember your number, because we're only dividing 4. And if you do 1, if you reset 1, then you can do 1.
Okay, so you're excused to go. Thank you, Aaron, for that. It's trash now.
Who asked the visual learner question yesterday? Everybody?
What?
Who asked in the breakfast yesterday who is a visual learner? It was like, what are some tips and tricks for visual learners?
Reading?
Huh?
Remember what I wrote on that
Oh.
flashcard?
One thing they didn't mention that might help out for visual learners would be like color coding things. So for me this is like my nursing comp reference sheet to make sure that I hit on the main points of the question, but I have like them color coordinated with each day. So that might be something for those visual learners to cluster things together and kind of have that color cue that you see the color and then you see the color on the answer. So like taking notes in color coordinated fashion, that kind of helps out with visual learners and stuff. Okay, so go ahead, we'll open up the nursing comp book to question 109. Okay, so question 109. How should the psych tech provide mouth care to an unconscious patient? We got suction toothbrush. Now what about their position?
You gotta be upright.
Sitting upright, facing you. Now upright with the head of the bed 30 degrees or more. So that would be semi-Fowlers or high Fowlers. They'll be in a supine position with a towel underneath the chin. Now, what about their head position? What if they were looking up? All that mouth care is going to go back down either into their throat, into the stomach, which might upset the stomach, or go down the trachea and into the lungs. That's what they call. I know we talked about aspiration in injections, but there is such thing as aspiration into the lungs. So the word aspirate, all that means is moving fluid to where it's not supposed to be. So when we're trying to aspirate, when we're giving the injection, that fluid that we're moving where it's not supposed to be is we're moving the blood into the syringe where it's not supposed to be. So we don't want to aspirate any fluid when we're doing those IM injections. Same thing with the lungs. When we get fluid or food down into our lungs, that's fluid or food where it's not supposed to be. So that's what the actual word aspirate means. So we don't want to have the patient aspirate. So either chin tilted down or head to the side will work too. Now here we go. What equipment is necessary for providing mouth care to an unconscious client? We have suction. Now what happens if we don't have those fancy suctions and those fancy toothbrushes? We're going to need a regular toothbrush. We're going to need an emesis basin. With the toothbrush, we always pair it with who? Toothpaste, right? pointless to brush your teeth without toothpaste. Have you guys ever done that because you're desperate on a trip?
No.
It's a kind of gross taste. If you guys ever done that, sick. It's not enjoyable, but it kind of helps get the plaque off your teeth. Then you rinse out your mouth real good. It doesn't feel fresh.
What about the no toothbrush, only toothpaste and a finger?
I have not done that. That's sick. Now I've gotten like real good at vacation travel planning. So like I have a designated travel toothbrush, travel toothpaste. Very seldom, it's like, that's a mistake of my 20s, not of my 30s. Yes.
Hey, what were those things that Miss Michelle was using, like, to put like water in the mouth in between the cheek?
So what, you're talking about the swabs.
Yeah.
So the swabs don't actually provide mouth care. Now what you can, one function of those, if you wanted to use those in mouth care, would be to dunk those into mouthwash and use it as a mouthwash. That would kill the bacteria in the mouth. But what we do is sometimes, has anyone in here had a surgery and they tell you you can't eat after midnight? And then your mouth becomes very cakey and very dry. One thing we can do is provide mouth moisture by just dunking those little toothets in water and moistening the mouth. We're not moistening the mouth to the point where they can swallow the water, but we're just providing that comfort of relieving the dry mouth. We can do that with both those little toothet swabs. We can also do that with the glycerin swabs that normally they're lemon flavor. So you can kind of help relieve some of that uncomfort by the mouth swabs. Okay, now when we're providing mouth care to a developmentally disabled person or a person who has seizures, sometimes they tend to clench their jaw. So this is where we can take 2 tongue blades and wrap gauze around them or tape gauze around them to help hold the teeth open. You put them in between the 2 layers of teeth and it helps hold the mouth open so you can provide that mouth care. All right, 110. The psych tech is assigned to shave the face of a male client who is immobile. What is the correct procedure to follow? And you'll find this in your book, the 10th edition. I think you guys are on the 11th, right? 12th. Oh my goodness. The books keep changing quicker and quicker. Well, if you had the 10th edition, you'd be able to find it in there. It should still be in your book around the same page because honestly, when editions get changed, they change a word or two. Very seldomly they change out the whole book. So when we're shaving the skin, the face, we want to make sure that the skin is taut by slightly stretching the skin. Whenever there's loose skin, you have the chance of accidentally nicking them. Now we're going to soften the hair follicle by applying shaving cream. Now, when you shave, do you shave against the grain or with the grain? With the grain. So on the cheeks, you're going to shave from top to bottom down towards the chin. When you're shaving the neck, you're going to shave from bottom up towards the chin. So you're going to meet at the chin. So we shave in the direction of the hair growth. Now, 111, a female client who is immobile, has long hair that the family has requested should be kept braided. How should the psych tech perform this care? Don't undo the braid. Is that realistic? No. We definitely want to keep care of the patient's hair. So, one clause I have in my will, my personal will, is if I'm ever unconscious in the bed, you will be surprised at how quickly the hair mats. Does the nurse necessarily have enough time in their day to do the hair? Not all the time. Very once in a while, and usually by the time we get to it, it's like past the point of no return. It's rough. The hair is really bad. So a clause I have in my will is that if I end up in my casket with a matted head, nobody gets any of my money. Sorry. Nobody gets a single dime. Why? They didn't take care of me when I was alive. Do they deserve my money when I die? No. They get nothing. So a client has hair and we want it braided. So first, we're going to braid the hair in pigtail braids. So if the patient is unconscious, what we'll do is we'll turn the head one half, braid one half of the hair, turn the head to the other side, braid the other half of the hair. What if you can't braid? Start practicing, because I didn't know how to braid before either.
Oh, so they really make you do that?
Oh yeah, I've braided tons of hair. So typically what I'll do, because I only have so many hours in the day, I think the longest I've spent on someone's hair is maybe like 6 hours. Can I do that every day? Absolutely not. So if the hair is really bad, once they have like a family member come visit, I'm like, come on, you're on detangling duty. And I have the family members do the hair. You have to. Otherwise the hair is so bad. If I have someone come in fresh, like this is their first day in the ICU, they have long, pretty hair. I'm like, okay, I know this hair is going to get really matted. If the patient isn't super unstable, because I mentioned to some people, you got to take care of the body, the life, before you do any of the extra stuff. So if they come in and I have a little bit of free time, what I'll do is just grab up all the hair and put it right at the top of the hair. I don't see anyone in a similar bun. Did anyone just like swoosh their hair into a bun? That would be like the closest thing. Kind of like that. And I tie it up just at the top of the head, because if it's on the back of the head, when they're laying flat in the bed, they're going to be on this big old lump of hair. So scoop it all up to the top, twist, 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 twist till it curls up into a bun. And that really, I mean, I could probably do it with my hair right now. And twist, twist, twist.
Bring it all the way up.
Yep. Twist, 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 twist.
And then I twist.
Twist, 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 twist.
And then I
Yep, just like that.
bang.
There we go. And that helps prevent the hair from getting tangled. You might get some mats in the back, but it really saves a lot of the hair. And when you undo it to brush it again and then twist it back up, it's a lot easier. Okay, let's go to number 112. The psych tech is assigned to care for a client that is too weak to get out of bed. How should the psych tech change the linen of a bed that is occupied by the client? Who did this skill with you today? I did. You guys remember the procedure pretty good? Because it's a whole lot of writing. So let's review it real quick. Psych tech should wear gloves. Position of the bed should be at a comfortable height. We're going to place the guardrail closest to you in the down position and lower the head of the bed. We're going to loosen the top bed linens, or what we did in class is remove them completely. We're going to assist the client to turn on one side of the bed, and the client must hold on to the rail. Is that a mosquito? Ah!
Oh, see, don't do me like you did the other day. Don't do me like you did the other day, like for real.
Okay,
Y'all missed the shenanigans the other day.
it was a
ridiculous.
mess. Oh no, it was
Oh,
in her
no,
hair.
It was in my hair. It was a June bug. I lost it.
It wasn't bad until she screamed. Cause I was gonna like grab it and then it like stepped on my finger
And
and
the-
I was like, okay, I almost got it. And she went, ah!
But I
not
did
have
that because the wings, I heard the wings starting to. So, sorry for the interruption.
They're a good toy for cats.
Huh?
They're a good toy for cats.
Oh, I bet. Okay. What am I doing right here? Now I'm itchy. I feel like the mosquito's on me. Okay.
Sorry.
The client must hold on to the side rail. If able, loosen the bottom linens, which is what the client's laying on. We're going to roll. We're going to roll the bedding underneath the client. We're going to put the new bedding on the bed. And we're going to stuff it underneath the old dirty linens. We're going to raise the bed rail and lower the bed rail on the opposite side. The client will roll from one side of the bed to the other, where we will carefully ease the old bed linens off and roll out the new bed linens. We're going to pull them tight and make sure there's no wrinkles and tuck the corners under the bed. We're going to place the sheet and then the blanket on top. Mitered corners. Now, if the patient refuses the mitered corners, do we have to do them? No. Don't put mitered corners on my bed. I don't like my feet getting trapped. Hotels, what is the first thing I do? Rip the foot out. Sure do. And then when we're done with that, we will replace the pillowcase and tuck the pillow back under the head. Cool? 113, what information is most important for the psych tech to obtain prior to bathing the client? Skin infections. If they have a skin infection, are we not going to clean the bed? We'll still clean the bed, but if that infection needs some sort of isolation, we're going to wear our appropriate PPE. We would want to obtain the client's condition and determine the correct bathing technique to implement. So, can the patient get into a shower chair and be wheeled to the shower? Can the patient walk to the shower themselves and bathe themselves? Can the client do anything, or do they need a complete bed bath because they're immobile? So you want to know their level of functioning. Okay, that looks like all the questions that are there for bed bath. Now, what time do we have? 1:16? Okay. Let's go ahead and review the diabetic questions that we were supposed to go over yesterday. Okay, we'll go back to number 12. The psych tech is assigned to teach a client with a diagnosis of diabetes mellitus about recognizing the symptoms of hypoglycemia. What are the signs and symptoms? So hypoglycemia is when the blood sugar is low. What level when we check the sugar is considered low? 60, yes. So if the sugar drops below 60, we gotta do something. Now at my facility, we have a policy that when the sugar drops below 70 is when we start doing something. So definitely know what your facility considers critical and what your facility considers not. Now, below 60 is a critical low blood sugar. 70 is kind of telling us it's going that way. We start intervention then. Now, signs and symptoms. This is what the patient is going to be feeling and experiencing. So sometimes they'll feel some confusion. Sometimes they'll feel cold and clammy. They will feel irritable. Sometimes they'll feel shakiness. When the sugar drops really low, they'll start to get really confused and their speech may become slurred. So there have been times where officers have pulled over patients, slurring speech, uncoordinated and confused, and they think immediately, oh, this person's drunk. They're not really drunk, they're just hypoglycemic. But the appearance is the same. So what should diabetic people wear? A medical alert bracelet. Sometimes, like on the car, you can get like a medical alert seatbelt attachment that when you open it up, like it's a Ziploc baggie, you'll open it up and it has all the meds the patient takes or whatever conditions the person has.
They even have now where you have an app on your phone that you can use, that they can access if you're unconscious or whatever, and they can see all of your medical issues, meds you're taking, things like that. So there's apps on phones now too.
I know on Apple phones, they call it the medical ID, and they can access the medical ID without unlocking your phone. So you should have like an emergency contact in there, but it takes you to set it up.
Same with the Samsungs and Google phones. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Mine is set up for mine.
Now that also requires you to carry your phone with you.
Yes.
That's not a problem.
But I'm just saying, that's
It's a problem
another,
in Vegas.
that's another way that they can identify and see what's going on, especially if you're driving or unconscious in an accident. They can check that if there's no other way to check.
Some people even get tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
Some. Oh, when they don't know who you are, they check
They
everything.
check everything. Oh,
They'll find your Facebook, dude.
Have you not, you've not seen this, a crash scene, huh? Oh, yeah,
They check everything.
They go through everything.
They need to know as much information about the person as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number 12. Number 13. Which intervention should be done immediately to relieve the signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia?
You need to increase your blood sugar.
So increasing the blood sugar. This is circumstantial. If the patient is awake and alert and oriented, they can eat and drink. What's a very fast source of sugar? Orange juice. Now, why do we use orange juice specifically and not something like apple juice? It has a lot of sugar, but it also has potassium in it. It's very high in potassium. So whenever sugars, so I'm just going to do a real rundown of diabetes real quick. So here is our cell. We have tons of them in our body, right? Tons of cells. Now what insulin is a hormone that's a key. So we have the hormone insulin, which is a key to let sugar unlock the door of the cell and go into the cell to be used as energy. Sugar always rolls with the homies. They roll with the homie potassium. So when sugar goes into the cell, potassium goes into the cell. That's why we use orange juice before apple juice. Because it likes to be with its friends.
I like the way you said that.
They do, they roll with the homies.
No.
So that's why we go with orange juice. What if the patient is unconscious? What can we do then?
Right, have to inject sugar for it.
You think injecting sugar? What about, you guys haven't done farm yet, have you? Have you guys done farm? No? Okay. What about nicotine gum? I know, it seems bizarre. There's a method to the madness. Nicotine gum, is that actual gum that people chew and swallow? No. Nicotine gum you put into the mouth up against your gums. Your mucous membranes absorb that nicotine from that nicotine gum. What about absorbing sugar through that spot? So you think maybe like a glucose gel that we can put in there? Uh-huh. So for an unconscious person, we can use a glucose gel. What happens if that glucose gel doesn't work? Then we start thinking about injection. So what we inject is a medication called glucagon. Now, glucagon is a hormone, and what that does is it tells your body to release stored sugar in the process called glyconeogenesis. I know. It takes biochem to learn all this stuff. Sorry. So in that process, what that does, because in our liver and our muscles, it stores any extra glucose that we have. So that's why when we eat too much, our body stores too much. Then we gain weight. So what that glucagon does is it tells our body to take that stored sugar and convert it into usable sugar. So that's glucagon. Usually it's an intramuscular or a subcutaneous injection. Okay, number 14. A client with a diagnosis of diabetes mellitus is put on a 1,600 calorie ADA diet. What is the goal in their diet teaching?
Weight loss?
I hear weight loss. Now, our goal of diabetes, weight loss helps, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is to get the sugars within normal levels. So, when we teach the client about this diet, we want to teach them to maintain proper sugar levels, proper fat levels, and try to keep them as close to normal as possible to prevent any diabetic complications. Okay, number 15. What is generally accepted as the normal range for serum blood glucose? Now, we say generally because each facility might be slightly different. So this is talking about just general. So normal sugar, what is it?
100 to 120.
Well, we talked about the low earlier.
60 to
Yeah, it should be 80.
So 60 to 120, I believe is what they have it listed in your book as. So 60 or less would be considered hypoglycemic. So let's look at this medical term real quick. We have hypo, low, glyce, sugar, emic, blood. That's why anemic is low blood. So less than 60, hypoglycemic. 60 to 120, normal. 120 or greater. What do you think it is? Hyperglycemic. All right, now this is talking about insulin. So in your guys' blue books, I want to say it's by the injection part. So after your injection section on your blue book, on the 17, you're going to have different things, different types of insulin. So on that, it's table 1. Do you guys see it? Table 1, it talks about all the different types of insulins. And you'll see some words that say onset, peak, and duration. It's under the injection part. You guys don't have to quite turn to it. But just know that it's there, and it looks like a graph like this, a little table chart. So on that chart, there's 3 words that says onset, peak, and duration. What do you think onset means? When it starts working. Peak. When it's the most effective. When it's working the hardest. Duration. How long it works. How long till it stops working? Okay. So onset, peak, and duration. Now for me, I start my shift at the hospital at 7 a.m. That is my onset. Am I working my hardest? No. Am I pulling a Devlin and a George and half asleep? Yes. 100%. working my hardest? What time do you think my peak? When do you think my peak of my 12-hour work period is?
10 o'clock.
I hear 10.
She said
You're
15 minutes
gracious.
before her shift is over.
I start working real good at about 11. I wake up, coffee's hit. Here we go, let's go. When do you think I start slowing down?
She said 1 o'clock.
No, I take my lunches late. I take my lunches around 3 or 4. So, I usually slow down at around 2. So my peak is between 11 and 2.
I'm gonna code on that.
Duration. How long is my shift? 12 hours, but I don't get paid for the 30-minute lunch. So, 19:30, that's quitting time. That's onset, peak, and duration. So, this is right here, Sarah. What about Humalog? Humalog is a type of insulin. It starts working about 15 to 30 minutes after we give it. This is fast acting or rapid acting. So 15 to 30 minutes is when it starts working. When, this thing says 45, good for it. When is the peak? When does it start working the hardest? 2 to 4 hours after we give it. So let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm about on track with Humalog. Right? Me and Humalog are about the same. It starts hitting the peak a little bit earlier. Okay, fine, show off. But the duration, how long does Humalog last?
3 or 4 hours.
Okay. So it only works for 3 to 4 hours. Do I got Humalog B?
I can last 12 hours.
Humalog can't. What about one called Lantus? Now Lantus, I know the info in the book is different than what it is in actuality. So Lantus, its duration is how long? 24 hours. So this is a short-acting insulin. This is a long-acting insulin. I believe your blue book says that it does peak. We are taught at my hospital that Lantus does not peak. So it works slow and steady throughout the day. But it works for a whole 24-hour period. So it doesn't burn all of its energy in a peak. Nice and slow. So I believe your question on the nursing comp talked about Humalog, right? Oh, it's talking about regular insulin, but regular insulin and Humalog are very similar. So, number 16 of your nursing comp. What is the most likely time for your client to experience an insulin reaction if 10 units of regular insulin has been received at 7:30 a.m.? So at what time are they most likely to experience a hypoglycemic accident? At the peak, when the med is working the hardest. So, took the med at 7:30, 8:30, 9:30. So 9:30, we're gonna start watching for reactions. 9:30 is when we start looking for reactions, when we stop looking for reactions. At the 4 hours, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. So between 9:30 and 11:30 is when we're most likely to experience a hypoglycemic event, which would be an adverse reaction to insulin. That's your answer. All right, now let's throw in another med that we learned yesterday, NPH. What is the onset of NPH? One to 2 hours. The peak?
6 to 12 hours.
The duration? Same as Lantus, right? 24? So if we gave the patient NPH at 7:30, when are we most likely to experience that adverse reaction? 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30 is when we start looking for reactions.
Does our SLT in military time?
No, 13:30 would be military time.
Or does it have to be military time for the test?
So, if it were on a test, I'm pretty sure it would be on military time. Now with you practicing, as long as you know the difference between 13:30 and 1:30, and you know I'm only a day shift person, so I'm only gonna experience a 1:30 p.m. because I will never be at work at a 1:30 a.m. That's on your practice. And I can't say that. I've done some night shifts to help out. Usually there's an incentive. So the first time would be 1:30. When would the second time be? So 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 p.m. is when we would expect that reaction to be at its lowest. 17 we just did, huh? I know there was more diabetes ones. Okay, 175. Number 18 is a nutrition one. Yeah. Okay, what actions are critically important to take prior to administration of insulin? Ooh, I think I hear it over here. Loud and proud? Check the blood sugar, yes. We want to know what the blood sugar is before we give insulin because insulin is going to drop the blood sugar. Insulin is going to open up the door to the cell and let the sugar go out of the blood and into the cell. That's how it drops the blood sugar. So check the sugar. Do we give the insulin with just one person looking at the dose? Two-person verify. Two licensed people verify. And we're going to verify the name of the insulin, the name of the patient, the right dose, and that it matches up with our medication order. Now, when we give those fast-acting insulins, the rapid ones, regular insulin or Humalog, you do want to have that meal tray available because it starts working after about 15 minutes. If that meal tray is too late and that 15 minutes goes longer, we're putting that patient at risk for hypoglycemia. Do we have to worry too much about the long-acting insulins? Not too much. We don't have to have that meal tray right there, but the short-acting ones, yes. Number 176, the preferred route of administration of insulin for a client with diabetes type 1 is, how do we give it? Preferred route. Can we eat insulin? No. Our stomach acid kills the hormone. It destroys it. Pointless to eat insulin. How do we give insulin? Injection. What kind of injection? Subcutaneous injection is the preferred way. Now, in critical settings, you do give insulin IV, but it's not commonly done. It's usually when people go into a diabetes crisis, known as DKA, or if the patient's potassium is critically high and we need to get that potassium, the homie, inside the cells so it doesn't damage the heart. (177) What action should be taken when the patients receive multiple injections of insulin? Rotate the sites. What happens if the person injects into the same site over and over and over and over and over? The site becomes hard. When that site becomes hard, it's because that site has been overused. When the site is overused, the insulin no longer gets absorbed. How should the needle, number 178, how should the needle and syringe be discarded after the medication has been administered? What do we do before the sharps container? We want to use the safety mechanism. So we want to lock the needle and then dispose it into the sharps container. What if you have one of those random needles that doesn't have a safety on it? Do we recap it? No, straight to the sharps container. So there is a difference between sharps container and biohazard container. Now, in the end, ultimately, all of them get thrown into the incinerator. All of them. Now, when you think of a biohazard container, it's more like a trash can size. The lid you can lift up and put down. Sharp's container, once you deposit that Sharp in there, you can't access it again. So that's really where like the clear line is that Sharp's containers, they have the potential to pierce your skin. So you want those to only be deposited in and not have access to it afterwards. The biohazard, you know, if you had a housekeeping person, biohazards are very much like trash cans, but with red bags in there. If you threw an exposed needle in there and then housekeeping came up and scooped the bag from the outside, but that needle poked through the bag, that's where there's a difference in how you dispose of it. So ultimately, in the end, they end up in the same place, but there's safety mechanisms for needles that aren't for normal biohazard. Okay, question 179. How should the psych tech provide foot care to a client who has peripheral neuropathy related to diabetes mellitus? What does that mean? That's a whole lot of words. So a person who has had diabetes for a long period of time, where the sugars have been high for a long period of time, tend to have damage done to their body. These are damage to the blood vessels because sugar molecules in our body are very big molecules and they're very sharp molecules. So think of like a rock with jagged edges. Let's say you take that rock with jagged edges and you throw it down a slip and slide. Is it going to damage that slip and slide? Is it going to poke holes in that slip and slide? Now, thankfully, our blood vessels are like slip and slides that can repair themselves. But when we repair ourselves, we make scar tissue. So when there's scar tissue happening, the blood vessel muscles aren't going to expand and contract like they used to. Same thing happens to our nerves. Those sugar molecules also are sharp and damage our nerves as well. The nerves that get affected the most are what we call the peripheral nerves. So the hands and the feet. Feet more so because where does blood pool? Down in our feet. So the feet will be affected more than the hands will. When the nerves of the feet are damaged, they call that peripheral neuropathy. That's the name of the condition. So, we think of scar tissue. Can we ever heal scar tissue and make it go away? No. Once the scar tissue is there, it's there. So, when we have a client with peripheral neuropathy because of diabetes, there is no cure for it. The only thing we can do is treat the symptoms of it. So how do we treat the symptoms of it? We're going to teach the client to inspect their feet daily. We're inspecting their feet daily because we get a scabbed toe, like we stub our toe, and it hurts, right? Especially as a kid, man, that hurt so bad. That was probably like injury number 1, crying to mom, stubbed toe. Something so small, but it hurt the worst. Now, people with the diabetic neuropathy, they stub their toe and they don't feel it. They have no idea there's a wound down there. I'll tell you the sickest story in a minute. You want to teach them, inspect their feet daily. Don't walk barefooted. Dry their feet thoroughly. Exercise daily. And don't pick at your sores. Here comes the sick story.
I'm waiting.
Oh, girl, it's foul. Whew. One of those things you'll never forget.
Oh, we've got lots of those, you guys.
So back when I used to moonlight down in ER, there was, dude, there was this one time we get this patient brought in by ambulance, and the guy was a diabetic, had some pretty nasty feet. Well, the family member ran to the grocery store while the patient was sleeping. I think he was on one of those recliner chairs with the feet up. He had dogs. No joke. The dogs ate his toes off. Sick. The dogs ate the toes off because they were infected and they smelled like a tasty dog treat. So you know how the feet are like this and the toes are sticking up? The toes were gone. No toes, just flat, not even nubs. They were feet gone. Gone. This is what we saw, and they were just bleeding and tons of blood.
So why
Did the patient wake up when the dogs were eating the feet? No, because he had diabetic neuropathy. You think if a dog bit your toe, you would wake up? Straight away, I'd wake up. But this guy had diabetic neuropathy so bad, he didn't feel the dog eating all 10 toes.
That's a story for you, right?
Sick.
He wasn't elevated like on his bed or anything?
He was on a lounge chair with the feet up. Mm-hmm. And right at dog level, they had a tasty treat.
That's so disgusting.
Sick, I tell you. You're welcome for the nightmares in advance. You know okay, so think of Grey's Anatomy. You got the nurses in the little outfits and no, it's not like that at all. You're gonna find if you hang out with a lot of nurses, they have a lot of nasty stories. They can talk about nasty things while eating. No problem. Give me the steak that looks like the toes. Thank you. You tend to develop a really tough stomach. You also need to develop what we call a poker face. So what were to happen if I went to that patient and said, "Oh my God, your toes are gone"? He's gonna freak out. Freak out. Now I will say the family member that had left the patient, they were the one that discovered the toes were missing and woke him up. There was blood everywhere. So yes, that person was freaking out. The patient still couldn't feel it, even in the ER. No feeling. Yeah. I have no idea. Not my business. Type of dog, don't matter. Dog ate the toes. That's all that mattered. But when we're taking care of clients, when you guys go to the nursing home rotations, you are going to see some sick wounds. Nasty wounds. They are going to smell foul. They're going to look foul. Some of them will look like steak. Are you ever going to eat steak again? I sure do. I sure do. Filet mignon, come my way. You're going to develop strong stomachs. You're going to develop a very cool and calm demeanor when it comes to seeing abnormal things. So, I've seen urine all sorts of colors. All sorts of colors. Pretty blue, green, red, regular yellow, that's normal. but you're gonna see some pretty bizarre things during your field of work. Now, if I saw the patient with the green urine, oh my God, your urine's green, what is that gonna do to the patient? Freak them out. Or even worse, what if they have a really nasty wound and I go, ugh, yuck? They're gonna feel offended and report you to your supervisor.
So you guys remember when we were talking about oral care and I said, what's my one weakness? You're gonna develop, like I was telling you, you're gonna develop bonds with your team and they'll be like, oh, Michelle, there's a vomit and we know not to call Michelle. Same thing with like certain type of things that you guys see along the way there. You're gonna see them and you'll be like, oh, I can't do this. Nurses don't have that leisure as much. They don't have that leisure as much because they see the gamut of everything. But as psych techs, we don't see quite as much as what they see, and you just gotta try to be as strong as you can and do what you gotta do.
Yeah, there's gonna be some interesting experience you guys have.
And as students, you have to experience it all.
Yeah. Don't hide from a opportunity to learn something or see something different. Wound care may not necessarily be your thing, but do jump in there and get doing it. The more you do it, the more desensitized you get to it, and the more it becomes eh. Now I will say, like for me personally, if it's another person, no problem. If I'm getting my blood drawn, I'm passing out. If I'm getting stitches, passing out. If I'm getting whatever it is, passing out. I was a lot braver when I was younger. Now that I'm older and I have knowledge behind me, passing out. So, yeah, ignorance is bliss sometimes. It's okay though. All right, so let's go back to number 180. A client with a diagnosis of diabetes mellitus is alert and independent in managing their activities of daily living. The client complains that the toenails are long and need to be trimmed. What should the psych tech do?
You don't cut the nails yourself, do you?
Nope. There we go. We heard it in the corner. Podiatry. Nail of the foot doctor. Especially for a client with diabetes. Do we let them cut their own nails when they're in a facility? No. Podiatry does it. What happens if they nick themselves and they don't feel it? They have a wound, and now that wound doesn't heal. Now it's a big problem because they're going septic. Their whole foot needs to be chopped off, which happens a lot with diabetic patients. I know that sounds dramatic. Oh my gosh, you're going to cut the whole foot off because of a small nick from cutting nails? It happens.
All the time.
All the time. There are people, when they go into the doctor and they say, I've had diabetes for 10 years, they think, okay, how many toes are they missing? It is a shock to have a long-term diabetic patient with all toes. It's a shock. Diabetes is horrible. You gotta keep it, you gotta manage it and keep it under control. Okay, so don't cut your own toenails, get the podiatrist. Now, if they insist to cut their own nails at home or they just get the nail clippers, we instruct them to just cut them straight across. No curving at the edges, no digging out the ingrown toenails. That's podiatry's specialty. Instruct them cut straight across. 181. You assess the patient and you smell a sweet, fruity odor on the breath for a client with diabetes mellitus. The psych tech remembers that this is a sign and indicates which medical condition. Hyperglycemia, but it's a specific type.
Okay,
Why do I write it in red? Why did I write it in red? Not blood. Medical emergency. DKA is a medical emergency. Patients who come into the hospital with DKA end up in ICU. So DKA stands for diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis. This is when the sugars go extremely high. Now, is high sugar a medical emergency? Not necessarily, no. Is the keto a medical emergency? Because of the keto, the medical emergency here is acidosis. So when we talk about DKA, acidosis is the medical emergency because the blood is turning to acid. The blood is getting too acidic to maintain the body's functions. So, we have this picture here where the insulin opens up the key to the cell door and allows sugar and potassium to go in the cell. With diabetic ketoacidosis, that door is locked because we don't have the key. Is the cell going to get fed with no sugar? What happens to that cell? It's starving, right? And what does the body do when the body realizes it's starving? It goes for other energy sources like the fat. When fat is being used, it puts out the ketones. Now, ketones, there's 3 of them that the body puts out as last-ditch effort for energy. That cell needs to get fed, right? Let's give it all we can, and we're going to put out ketones. One of them is acetone. That's why we smell the fruity breath. The second one, it starts with an N, and it goes on, and it's a really long word. Do I remember it off the top of my head? Mm-mm. The third one, just as long as a word. Long word. Now, of those 3 molecules, only one of them is actual energy. Only one of them puts out, biology class, ATP. Only one of those. And the amount of ATP that it does put out is not enough. I see you laughing. It all goes around big circle. Who would have thought they ever heard of ATP again? You thought you were done with that. It's coming back in summer. Get ready.
Have you used applications that like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, we need to refeed the cells. What we do is we give them low dose sugar and low dose insulin through the IV. Slowly and surely, the body realizes, okay, the cells are getting fed, we can stop putting out ketones. So that's how we treat it. But medical emergency, DKA.
Can you see if you're close to DKA on a like glucometer or something?
Now the glucometer, you could have a high sugar without having the acidosis. So let's say, for example, you go out for a dinner for your birthday and you took your insulin in the morning and you took your insulin in the morning, you went out to dinner, and it was your birthday, so you had a big piece of cake. Your sugar's gonna spike with that big piece of cake. So if you check your sugar at that time, yes, your sugars are gonna be high, but you're not gonna have that fruity odor of the breath. You're not gonna be putting out ketones. So any one of you guys had a friend do the ketogenic diet, and then all of a sudden their breath kind of started changing and it was a little smellier? No?
Yeah, actually, my mom, I even told her, I was like,
Something's going on. Brush your teeth.
yeah, I thought something was going on. I was like,
That's because of the diet. You're smelling those ketones.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now, even though the purpose of that diet is to make the ketones, because you're using the fat instead of carbs as energy, your cells are still being fed because you have insulin for normal people. Can a diabetic person do the ketogenic diet? Yeah, they can do it if they take their insulin. Because there's no point in producing ATP if you don't have the key to unlock the door. So if you have the key to unlock the door, by all means, do the different diets. So the main thing was that the cells are starving. Even though there's plenty of sugars outside the cells, there's plenty of ketones outside the cells. None of it is getting into the house for the potluck because the door is locked and there's no keys. That's the big thing about DKA. So typically people who come in with DKA, they're like, oh, I haven't taken my insulin for a week. And we're like, what happened? Oh, I went out of town and I didn't have a room with a refrigerator. That's technically against the law for them not to provide you adequate supplies of your medical equipment. So normally it's patients who haven't had their insulin for a while, then cells are starting to starve. That's what gets them into DKA. 210. We got two more. Let's run through them really quick, okay? 182. The psych tech is preparing to check the blood glucose of a client with a diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. After cleaning the client's finger with alcohol, where should we prick the finger with the lancet? The edges of the finger, around the outside. On the tips of our, not the tips of our fingers, but the pads of our fingers, we have more nerves, our sensory nerves. So on the edges are sometimes a little less sensitive. That's the theory behind that. Now what happens if you poke the finger and the blood pressure's too low and you can't get blood? You can go for the earlobe. Does it hurt? Yeah. Number 183, the psych tech is providing care to a client with a diagnosis of peripheral neuropathy related to diabetes. What intervention should be performed when meeting the needs of the client? We kind of went over this one a little bit already. Check the feet daily. Now, one thing we can also do, anybody had that wool thing on the seatbelt when it scratches the neck too much? You can also, if your shoes fit a little tight and they're rubbing, especially for diabetic people, you can use that same lamb wool to pad the shoes, just so the shoes don't rub and cause a wound. There's also special diabetic shoes that the clients can wear that are soft and they don't have how the heel has that plastic part? It won't have that plastic part. It's all just like a soft meshy. If you guys have seen my bright purple shoes, they're kind of like diabetic-ish shoes. There's no hard, rigid rubber pieces or leather pieces. It's more of like a soft, meshy shoe. So those are good for diabetics too. Huh?
Are they comfortable?
Yeah. And that's 183. Let me just run through these and make sure I'm not missing any. Yeah, I think that's good. So keep in mind, when we have Skills Lab, please do watch those videos. My group and Ellie's group, if I could get your guys' notes on the, yes. If you already handed them to me, then I have them, but I forgot to ask the rest of the groups.
And one thing I want to remind you guys, I know you guys are probably wondering like, why do I keep saying stuff? I'm very much a stricter for the dress code. So if I see you with stuff that's outside of the dress code, I'm gonna call you on it. So just be prepared if you guys come in with hats or you have your piercings in or whatever, I'm gonna call you on it. Okay? So make sure you guys follow the dress code all the time. All right?
So on number 16, I was kind of confused because you said that it was at its peak when it worked from like 9:30 to 1:30 for regular insulin, but then I saw regular and then it said 24 hours. So you gave the dose.
So we gave the dose to 7. Do you put notes here?
I think so.
Oh. That's when the med works the hardest. When it works the hardest, we have part of the higher likelihood of having an adverse reaction because it's working the strongest. So if we gave it at 7:30, 8:30,
Then you tell me everything on night.
that's when the peak starts. It's about 7:00. So 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. That's when the peak is done. So that's when, what time of day we're gonna have our strongest reaction between 9 and 11:30.